Now this one, this is 2 of 2 for today. This is going to trigger some people. I'm okay with that. I knew it was coming. Save this one for last for a reason. But this is the slavery video that people are going to absolutely hate, and I'm okay with it. Talk to me about it. Tell me how much you hate it. Whatever. But this is the video, this is the subject matter that people really, really like to scream about. So if you go to Exodus chapter 21, you get down around about verse 20, there is a passage that says that a slave owner may beat his slave with a rod, or what? How does it say? If a slave owner beats his slave with a rod and that slave dies, he must surely be punished. But if the slave recovers within a day or two, then it's fine. And people lose their absolute crap about that because they just can't fathom, oh my gosh, that's so wrong. Well, cool your jets. Because then if you go down to around verse 26 and 27, it also says that if a slave owner causes a slave, I'm paraphrasing obviously because I'm trying to remember exactly how it says it and I can't. But it says if a slave owner causes permanent damage to a slave's eye, that slave has to be set free as compensation for the damage to their eye. In 27 it says if a slave owner causes a slave to lose a tooth, that slave has to be set free as compensation for their tooth. There's a lot of information in here that's not given, but essentially what we see here is a huge gap of not information, but we see here that there is, in that gap, what it's basically saying is there is a disciplinary situation set forth. That yes, you can discipline those who work for you as long as you don't cross the line into abuse. And definitely not into murder. That's what's being said here. There's a difference between discipline and abuse, and that's what's being set forth. And people lose their minds because they say it's because, well, that's abuse and it's not okay. And that's what people claim that they have a problem with. That's not what people really have a problem with, though. Because anybody who actually takes the time to read this and have any kind of dig deeper mindset can see that this is talking about simple discipline and the difference between discipline and abuse. And if you abuse the slave, if you abuse the worker, if you abuse the person, then there's punishment to be had. And that's clear in what's being said here. And sorry, I lost my train of thought a little bit, but it's very clear that it says there's a line between discipline and abuse. And if you abuse somebody, then you need to be punished. And beyond being punished, they need to be set free because you can't be trusted with them anymore. So that's very clearly set out here. And anybody who takes any kind of time to use any critical thinking as they're reading this can see that. So what people really have a problem with as they read this passage of Scripture is, I just don't want discipline. I just don't like the idea of there being any kind of a disciplinary situation anywhere for me to have to answer to because, well, discipline is just not something I want to face. That's why people have a problem with the whole spare the rod, spoil the child portion of Scripture. Because, well, you know, spanking a child is abuse. No, it's not. It's not. Beating a child is abuse. Spanking a child is discipline. And there is a difference, and it's a very big difference. And we now have 2 to 3 generations of children who are coming into adulthood who were not spanked, who are products of soft parenting and are now worthless as adults, and we can see it all around us. And you can deny that if you want, but everybody can see that. And it's having a huge effect on what's going on in our culture today. So just look around if you think that soft parenting is really effective, because clearly it's not. there are 2 to 3 generations of incoming adults that are spoiled and ruined adults because they were spared the rod and they were spoiled and are useless as adults. They are entitled, they don't have a work ethic, they have no idea how to earn for themselves, and they are bleeding the rest of us dry, and we're all having to pick up the slack for them. And they don't like the idea of discipline. And that's exactly what is being put forth here in this passage in Exodus. And it's being put forth in that passage with the spare the rod, spoil the child. Is discipline is important. Discipline is necessary. You have to discipline a person to teach them how to be appropriate, how to act appropriately, how to conduct themselves in situations. Because if you don't, then they won't know how, and they won't do it right. Because as a child, I got plenty of, let me rephrase that. As a child, I got spankings. I got out of more than I should have, but I got whooped, and I earned it plenty of times. And it did not have a negative effect on me. The effects it had on me is I learned how to respect those in authority. I learned how to deal with those in authority in an appropriate way. Even when those in authority were wrong, I learned how to deal with that incorrectness from them in a way that I could handle their incorrectness in a way that didn't get me in more trouble, but in a way that would correct them appropriately so that I wouldn't pay the consequence for acting out in a negative way. Like all these people you see who video their traffic stops and act like absolute fools the moment the cop walks up to the window, even though they know they were wrong, or even though they know they did, or whatever the case. Just all this stupid that you see all around you in the world today is a product of people not wanting to face discipline. Whether they're wrong or not, they don't want to face discipline, and they don't want to deal with things in the right way. And that's because people don't like the idea. People don't like the idea that discipline is necessary. And that's exactly what I'm talking about in this passage in Exodus. Even as adults, sometimes we need the rod. Sometimes I need the rod. And you right now who's watching this and who's mad and just frothing at the mouth because how dare he say this, sometimes you need it too. Probably right now. It's probably why you're so mad right now. You're not perfect. Get over thinking that you are. Because the more time you spend walking around thinking you got it all figured out and that you're perfect and you don't need any help and you don't need to be corrected, the more likely you need to be corrected right now. And the more often you probably need to be corrected, because that bigger and holier than now you think you are, the more often you're probably wrong. I've lived that life. I know how that is. I can talk about this because, I can make fun because I are one. That's just how it works. So be mad, be triggered, be upset, but understand, even as adults, sometimes we need the rod. It's not abuse. It's discipline. It's correction. And correction is necessary for growth. And if you're not growing, you're useless. Don't be useless. We'll see you next time.